And up next, we have Laura Pearlman. Laura is a computer scientist at USC Information Sciences Institute and a member of the FaceBase Hub. And she's also a member of the Atlas DCK Center, which is a research hub for mouse and human data, which is run by NIDDK. Please welcome, Laura.
I'm going to be talking about data stewardship best practices and how FaceBase can support those. So I'm just going to start with some standards that we are supporting. The first one is FAIR. FAIR has been around for a while: findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable data. So the idea behind FAIR is that we want to have enough structured data and metadata that data can be reused, both by humans being able to replicate experiments, and by automated processes being able to read and understand the data. And some of what we've been talking about earlier with the machine learning and artificial intelligence is a good example of that. So the scope of FAIR is the data itself. The next one is trust, which is newer, which focuses on repositories. Having FAIR data is great, but if you can't count on it still being there in a year, or being there accurately right after you've uploaded it, then the FAIR data is most useful. So the idea for trust is to ensure that repositories can be relied upon to manage FAIR data to serve the needs over time. And to further increase the trustworthiness of trusted repositories, there's a standards body called Core Trust Seal, which is an international consortium that has created more specific standards for trust and provides certification. And we are in the process of applying for that now. It's under review. And then, of course, NIH has its data management and sharing policy. And the goal, actually, I really like Alicia's phrasing of cultivating a culture of data stewardship, but I didn't hear that before I wrote this slide. So basically, the idea is to essentially make sure that this all happens for NIH-generated data, or data generated by NIH-funded projects. And just to kind of illustrate the difference in scope, all of these things are associated with metadata requirements. So FAIR has to do with the amount of metadata and the completeness and accuracy of the metadata for the data itself. Trust has to do with repositories having processes to curate metadata, to curate data, and make sure that the metadata that's associated is complete and accurate. And then the data management and sharing policy is basically to make sure this all happens, essentially. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little more about FAIR than about the other things for two reasons. One is that, FAIR is fundamental to the rest of it, and the other is that ensuring that data is fair requires more effort on the part of investigators than, say, the trustworthiness does. So the first requirement is that it's findable, and one of the things is that there's a globally unique and persistent identifier. Globally unique is pretty obvious. Persistent means that even if the data moves, you can find it. Even if the data is deleted, there is some metadata left behind about what happened to it, and if it's archived somewhere, how you can get it. I've talked a little bit about metadata, and then there is the searchability requirement. So you have all this metadata, but you need to be able to search on it. And so FaceBase supports all that by automatically generating identifiers for everything. So we have FaceBase specific identifiers for everything, and then data sets get DOIs generated by DataCite. We impose basically a rich metadata model. So for each different data type, we have a a schema for all of the data, so data models for the data. We use standard ontologies. You know, we talk with investigators about what kinds of ontologies we need to use. We do support the faceted searches, so we do have rich support for search. And then, of course, we do have open access to all our data. And so if you are rating the DMS plan, there are some of the DMS questions related to that, and I've listed those here. I'm not going to go into the specifics about what exactly you write in your DMS plans, but at the end, we'll have a link to a FaceBase page that does go into all of that, those specifics, and has text snippets and links to what metadata we are currently, or what ontologies we're currently supporting and what metadata we currently require. Also, if you were here yesterday and went to the tutorial, then you probably heard all that too. The next is accessibility, which is basically users need to know how to get the data once they know that they want it. And again, we have much support for that. We have open access data and metadata retrievable through our web interface. We also have REST and Python APIs that can be used for programmatic access. The schema itself is retrievable through REST. We use standards for authentication when that's necessary. And we preserve metadata for all objects, even if they're no longer accessible. And then again, there are a couple of DMS plan elements that this is relevant to. Interoperability. So we, of course, interoperate with a lot of different projects, as you've heard some samples of earlier today. And again, we have standard formats like JSON that are useful for programmatic interfaces, and our data model is relational, which means that we have many relationships between different metadata objects. Sorry, and then reusability has a lot to do with provenance and community standards, and also licensing and accessibility. And we support these with our data formats, our data models. We extend it as necessary when needs change. Say there's a new data type for craniostenosis. And we do have our very clear terms of use for our open access data and data use agreements for our controlled access data. And we do versioning and logging for the provenance. Okay, so basically, in summary, for the FAIR data, FaceBase 3 was built specifically to support FAIR data. It facilitates some really nice things, but it does require a fair amount of work on the part of the data contributor. So you do need to understand our data model. You need to make sure that the metadata that you're providing is in one of the ontologies that we support, or we might need to extend our ontologies to support your data. But in the interest of interoperability, with other projects, we're trying to stick to well-used, widely used, standardized ontologies, and not, something that some lab may have made up. And fortunately, NIH has a policy suggesting that you do these things. So, okay, moving on to trust. Again, kind of the idea behind trust is that just having FAIR data isn't enough. You need to be able to get at it, and you need to be able to get at it in the long run, and you need to be reassured that the data that you're getting is, relevant and accurate. Trust, so there's a core trust seal organization that's an international certification authority. We have applied for core trust seal certification, and we are under review there. The other thing about trust is that it's similar to a lot of journals' repository requirements. So for example, the Nature data requirements are very similar to the trust requirements. We have done some trust-related work that's been funded by ODSF, which has mostly been in the form of documenting some of our practices. I'm not going to go over all of these things, but basically, sort of on the left side, you have software and technology type things, and on the right side, you have processes, human processes, operational processes. So we have biocuration, we have our process for accessing controlled access human data. We have a lot of community involvement. We have monthly office hours, which everyone is invited to attend. Whenever someone contributes data, we will collaborate with them and meet with them multiple times to curate their data. We do a lot of outreach at meetings throughout the year. Alejandro in particular goes to a lot of those, and Rob. So that's basically that part. For the DMS policy, we strongly encourage you to do everything early. So please contact us early in the process when you know that you're going to put us in your DMS plan. Contribute data early and often. The sooner you contribute data, the sooner you find like little glitches in or differences in expectations of what you think will be required and what's actually required, or if there is a gap in an ontology. We do support embargoing data until publication, and in fact, data is automatically not public until the curation is finished. So aside from making all that easier, part of the data management and sharing policy is that you do need to have a plan for oversight and monitoring compliance. And if you have uploaded, whatever percentage of your data, that's easy to show if you've uploaded it to FaceBase. We do have a specific guide for what to write in your DMS plan if you're using FaceBase, because there are some parts of it that we just handle for you. For example, identifiers, and this document here has links to all of our metadata standards and supported ontologies. So if you're using those, you can use those text snippets. And if you're not using those, you know to contact us sooner so that we can work something out. Here's some more information. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to